and welcome to this episode of Coffee with Carl. I am your host, as always, Carl Zellner. I'm one of the attorneys with Anderson Business Advisors. Thank you for joining me for another episode. Today, I want to talk about something that has been, let's say, all over the news and very popular for a lot of the presentations I've been doing for the groups we work with. So, the question for today is how to deal with proposed tax changes. So there are lots of rumors and lots of proposed tax changes that are out there right now coming from the Biden administration, where there's lots of things always swirling around from a local perspective from, state of California, things like this. Most notably here at the beginning of the year was that Prop 19 issues in California. And we are always asked, well, how do we plan ahead for some of these tax issues I keep seeing in the news? And to be honest with you, your best bet in the way we work is the tax planning happens after the law is passed. So it's not so much that we don't think the information's valuable or that there's not some sort of canary in the coal mine when a lot of these proposals come through, but we also need to understand sort of the legislative process. And a lot of times, the way these proposals start the process is not the way they end it. So a lot of them get tweaks, a lot of them have additional pieces added on, riders, things like that. So really, when it comes to planning from the tax perspective, it's better to wait until the final law is in place and then do your planning. We've seen a lot of clients who try to pre-plan or jump the system on getting ahead of tax changes, and it's really hosed them in the long run, because by the time that tax law went from proposal to bill to law, it was vastly different, and they ended up hurting themselves because they made the change too early. So while we certainly believe in being proactive when it comes to legal changes or law changes, especially in regards to the tax code, the best course of action is to hold tight, see what the change is first, then you can make some changes to make sure that you're doing the correct amount of planning for your taxes. That's why tax planning, as just a sort of an aside here, is so important, is because the planning is where you get the net benefit on sort of your annual basis in your tax issues. Now, one thing, I'm just going to go over a single scenario because this happens quite often, is all of a sudden some tax change is going to happen, and then people want to just gift properties to their family, to their kids, basically. Now, a couple of things to note about going that route. Number one is if I'm gifting a property to my hypothetical kid here, my kid gets that gift at the basis I purchased that property at. So if I've owned a property for what I see a lot is in California, some, parents have owned this property for, 10, 20, 30 years. It has increased in value almost exponentially over that time. They gift the property to the kid, but now the kid owns the property at basically the value the parent purchased it for, back in the day. Now, separate scenario, parent passes away and gives the child the property through their estate or through their living trust. Now the child receives the property at current market value. They don't receive it at the parent's basis. So if we look at the numbers really quick, so let's say the parents bought a property in California for $50,000. Okay, I gift that property to the kid while I'm alive still at a current market value of, $200,000. The child receives the property at $50,000 from their tax basis in that property. They go to sell the property. Let's say they sold it for that $200,000. They have $150,000 of gain if they sell it the day it was gifted to them. Now let's look at another scenario. Let's say mom and dad set up a living trust, have the property in the trust, and pass it on to the kid after they've passed away. Let's use the same numbers just to keep it simple. They bought the property at $50,000. At the time of their passing, the property is worth $200,000. Now the child inherits the property at $200,000. If they sell it that day and the value is still the same, zero taxable gain. So these are some of the things we need to look at when we start talking about tax planning. And to my original point, with all these proposed changes, great. There's lots of things that get proposed on an annual basis, especially within a president's first term and all of these other options. I would caution and advise patience. And once there is a law or a law in place, then we can look at what kind of changes need to happen to make sure you're in the best position. There are lots of tools out there as far as tax and asset protection. And quite frankly, if there is some sort of sweeping change, which is, if you look at the long-term history of legislative changes, it's rarely some huge sweeping change that happens. It's usually incremental, and then by the time it gets to be sort of standing on the doorstep of a sweeping change, it flips back to the other. Congress and the presidency usually flip back to the other team. So it's just one of those things. Like I say, we caution patience. Once there is a final tax plan in place and the laws have officially changed, trust me, we will put out so much information you probably can't hardly stand it. But until it's law, it's all speculation. So that's it for that one. Yeah, tax law. Got to wait till it's a law before you start planning for it if you want to be effective and efficient in your planning. So thanks again for joining me for this episode of Coffee with Carl. As always, it is great to have you in my office and in my home and enjoying a nice cup of coffee with me today. So I will catch you next time. As always, please keep taking advantage of all of our free content out there. We're going to I'm planning on working on having some of the other attorneys within Anderson as well, not just the partners and myself, start putting out some content too. I'm excited to see that. They're a fun group. So I hope you stay tuned for that and join them as well. So until next time, thanks everybody again for joining me, and we will catch you on the next episode.